You dirty street rat! Get out of here!
Wait. I know you.
Thief. She is stealing from the wedding table. Vanessa Cole's voice sliced through Reed Mansion before the music even knew how to stop. Kiera Brooks froze beside the dessert table with a small paper bag in her trembling hands. Two security guards grabbed her thin arms. The violinist stopped playing. Rich guests turned around. Phones lifted. Whispers spread under the crystal chandeliers like smoke. Kiera looked down at the bag. Leftover bread. A few pieces of chicken. Food the servers had already pushed aside. Food no one in that ballroom would miss. But to her, it was dinner. It was hope. It was Mama Evelyn waiting in a cold apartment with no medicine and an empty stomach. Please, Kiera whispered, clutching the bag to her chest. My mother has not eaten since yesterday. Vanessa stepped closer in her white designer gown, her diamond ring flashing under the lights. She looked perfect, clean, powerful, untouchable. Kiera stood before her in a faded gray hoodie, soaked shoes, and jeans still damp from the rain outside. Your mother, Vanessa said with a cruel little smile. Do poor girls always bring a dying mother into their lives? A few guests laughed. One man raised his phone higher. Another woman covered her nose as if poverty had a smell. Look at her, someone whispered loudly. She does not belong near decent people. Kiera lowered her eyes, but she did not let go of the food. Her fingers tightened around the paper bag until it began to tear. Her stomach twisted from hunger. Her cheeks burned from shame. But all she could see was Mama Evelyn lying under a thin blanket, coughing in the dark, telling her, "Bring back anything, baby. Even bread." Vanessa circled her slowly like she owned the floor, the mansion, and everyone breathing inside it. Do you know whose wedding this is? She asked coldly. You walked into the Reed family mansion like a street rat. Kiera shook her head fast. I was not stealing jewelry. I was only taking food they were throwing away. Trash belongs in the trash, Vanessa snapped. Not in your dirty little hands. The crowd laughed again, louder this time. Kiera flinched, but she stayed standing. She wanted to disappear, but she would not drop the bag. She had already slept under bus station lights. She had already washed in public restrooms. She had already begged hospitals for more time. But this pain felt different. This pain had an audience. One guard suddenly yanked the paper bag away from her. Bread rolled across the white marble floor. Kiera dropped to her knees instantly. No. Her voice cracked. Please do not throw it away. She crawled forward, gathering the wet pieces while expensive shoes stepped back in disgust. Cameras pointed at her face. A woman laughed softly. How embarrassing. Kiera's hands shook as she picked up the bread and pushed it back into the torn bag. Tears fell, but she tried to keep her voice steady. Please, let me leave with it. I will not come back. I promise. For one small second, a waiter near the kitchen door looked like he wanted to help. An older guest frowned at Vanessa, as if something about this cruelty felt wrong. Tiny hope entered the room. Tiny mercy. Vanessa crushed it immediately. Do not pity her, she said sharply. That is how people like her survive. The waiter looked down. The older guest stepped back. Hope died before Kiera could reach it. Vanessa lifted her chin toward security. Throw her out, and call the police if she refuses. Kiera's breath broke. Please, she whispered again, lower now, almost begging the floor itself. My mother is sick. Vanessa leaned closer, her smile cold enough to freeze the room. Then maybe your mother should have taught you not to steal from people above you. Silence hit hard. Then the whispers returned. She planned this. She probably came for jewelry. Girls like that always lie. Kiera looked around the ballroom, searching for one kind face. No one stepped forward. No one defended her. No one saw a daughter trying to feed her mother. They only saw torn clothes and wet shoes. Then Kiera noticed the groom. Malcolm Reed stood near the grand staircase in a black tailored tuxedo, tall and still under the chandelier light. He did not laugh. He did not record. He only watched. Quiet, powerful, dangerous without moving. Vanessa noticed his silence and quickly turned sweet. Malcolm, baby, security found her stealing from our guests. Malcolm did not answer. His eyes moved from Kiera's shaking hands to the torn bag, then to the thin silver chain slipping from beneath her hoodie. One guard dragged Kiera upright. The chain caught against his sleeve, and an old pendant fell into view. A small silver moon, broken on one side, worn from years of being hidden against her skin. Malcolm's face changed, only for a second, but the change was real. Kiera saw it. Vanessa saw it too. Kiera quickly covered the pendant with her palm. "It is nothing," she whispered, fear rising in her throat. Vanessa stepped between them at once. "Fake jewelry," she said quickly. "Probably stolen too." Malcolm's eyes stayed fixed on Kiera's hand, like the pendant had pulled a memory out of a grave. Like something buried 20 years ago had just opened its eyes. The guards dragged Kiera toward the mansion doors. Rain pounded outside. The cold air slapped her face as they pushed her down the stone steps. One guard threw the torn paper bag beyond the gate. Bread scattered into puddles. Laughter rose from behind her. Kiera stood in the rain, frozen, then bent slowly to pick up the ruined food. Her tears mixed with the water on her cheeks. Then a deep voice cut through the driveway. "Wait." Every guard stopped. Every guest turned. Malcolm Reed stood at the top of the steps, his face pale, his eyes locked on the silver moon trembling against Kiera's chest. And then he said the words that made the entire wedding fall silent. "I know you." Rain hammered the stone driveway as Malcolm Reed stood at the top of the steps, staring at Kiera Brooks like the whole wedding had disappeared behind her. "I know you," he said again, softer this time. The guard stopped moving. The guests stopped whispering. Vanessa Cole's smile froze under the lights spilling from the mansion doors. Kiera clutched the silver moon pendant against her chest with both hands, her body shaking from cold, hunger, and fear. "You do not know me," she whispered. "Nobody here knows me." Malcolm walked down the steps slowly, calm, controlled, powerful without raising his voice. The guard stepped back before he even reached the gate. "Let her go," he said. One guard obeyed at once. Vanessa hurried after him, lifting the front of her white gown away from the rain. "Malcolm, please." She was stealing from our wedding table. Malcolm did not look at her. His eyes stayed on the broken silver moon. "Where did you get that necklace?" Kiera stepped back, scared by the way he asked. Not cruel, not mocking. Worse than that. Personal. "It belonged to my mother," she said. The words landed hard. Malcolm's face tightened. Vanessa laughed quickly, too quickly. Poor girls steal food. Poor girls steal stories. Now she is stealing family sentiment, too. Kiera lowered her head as the guests gathered beneath umbrellas near the mansion entrance. Their diamonds glittered in the rain. Their coats looked warm and expensive. Her hoodie stuck to her skin. Her torn shoes stood in puddles beside ruined bread. Malcolm looked at the food on the ground, then at her trembling fingers. "You came for leftovers?" he asked. Kiera swallowed. "My mother is sick. She has not eaten since yesterday." A woman near the door muttered, "That is what they all say." Vanessa pointed toward Kiera like the case was already closed. "Exactly. She knows how to make people feel guilty." Kiera shook her head. "I never asked for money." Malcolm finally turned to Vanessa. "Then why are you so afraid of a girl with bread?" Silence fell so sharply that even the rain seemed to pause. Vanessa's eyes flashed, then hardened. "I am protecting this family." "From hunger?" Malcolm asked. The guests looked at one another. A small crack opened in the room's cruelty. A waiter near the door looked down, ashamed. Tiny hope touched Kiera's chest, but she did not trust it. Hope had disappointed her too many times. Then a little flower girl behind the staircase pointed at Kiera's necklace. "Grandma has that moon in an old picture," she said. Vanessa snapped, "Go inside." The child stepped back, frightened. Malcolm noticed. Kiera noticed too. Malcolm glanced at his head of security. Check the west entrance cameras. Vanessa's face changed. "Why would you do that?" "Because I want to know how a starving girl became the villain of my wedding," Malcolm said. "If you're listening right now, comment where you are watching from, and tell me who you believe in this moment. The homeless girl holding ruined bread, or the rich woman trying so hard to silence her?" Kiera's cheap phone suddenly rang inside her wet pocket. The cracked screen showed St. Mary's Hospital. Her face went pale. "Mama," she answered. A weak voice coughed through the speaker. "Kiera, They said I cannot stay without payment anymore. Kiera closed her eyes as pain crushed her. Please wait. I am coming. Malcolm heard every word. So did Vanessa. Kiera tried to leave, but Malcolm stepped forward, not touching her, just blocking the shame around her with his presence. What is your full name? He asked quietly. Kiera Brooks. Malcolm repeated the name under his breath. Then Kiera's sleeve slipped as she wiped her tears, revealing a faint crescent-shaped birthmark near her wrist. Malcolm stopped breathing for 1 second. Vanessa saw his face and moved fast. Enough of this, she said. Let security handle her. But a guard rushed down the steps holding a tablet. Sir, he said carefully, you need to see this. Malcolm looked at the screen. The footage showed Kiera entering quietly through the kitchen side, taking only discarded food, touching no jewelry, speaking to no guests. Then the video froze right before Vanessa appeared beside her. Malcolm slowly lifted his eyes from the tablet to Vanessa. And for the first time that night, the woman in white looked truly afraid. Malcolm Reed stared at the frozen camera footage while rain slid down the tablet screen. Kiera Brooks stood beside the gate with ruined bread in her shaking hands. Vanessa Cole stood near the mansion steps, still beautiful, still dressed like a queen, but fear had cracked her perfect face. Get my driver, Malcolm said quietly. Vanessa grabbed his arm. Malcolm, this is insane. She is nobody. Malcolm did not look at her. Nobody does not make you panic like this. The words cut through the rain. Guests went silent. Kiera lowered her head, too tired to understand why a billionaire was suddenly speaking for her. Her cheap phone was still pressed to her ear, but the hospital line had gone dead. Mama, she whispered. Nothing answered, just silence. Her eyes filled fast. She clutched the silver moon pendant with one hand and the torn food bag with the other. Malcolm saw the way her fingers trembled. St. Mary's Hospital? He asked. Kiera stepped back. I can go myself. Vanessa laughed under her breath. Of course she can. She knows how to run after stealing. Kiera flinched but did not answer. She only bent down again and gathered the wet bread from the puddles. One piece slipped from her fingers. She picked it up anyway. Malcolm's face hardened. No one follows her with cameras, he said. The guests lowered their phones slowly. A black car rolled toward the gate, but Kiera did not get inside until Malcolm stepped back and gave her space. Quiet power. No dashing. No promise. Just enough room for her to breathe. 20 minutes later, Kiera entered the St. Mary's Charity ward with a ruined paper bag held close to her chest. The hallway smelled like bleach, old blankets, and fear. A nurse pushed a broken cart past flickering lights. Families slept in plastic chairs. Somewhere, a child cried softly behind a curtain. This was Kiera's world. Not chandeliers. Not silk dresses. Not champagne glasses. Bills. Coughing. Cold rooms. Waiting. Mama Evelyn lay beneath a thin hospital sheet, her lips dry, her breathing weak. Kiera rushed to her side. Mama, I came back. Mama Evelyn opened her eyes slowly. Did they hurt you? Kiera forced a small smile. No, it was a lie, but it was the kind poor daughters tell sick mothers. She placed the wet bread beside the bed and wiped her tears before Mama Evelyn could see them. I brought food. Mama Evelyn looked at the ruined pieces and still smiled. You always come back with something. That broke Kiera more than cruelty ever could. She turned away, pressing her fist to her mouth. Outside the room, a doctor checked a clipboard and frowned at the unpaid balance. Miss Brooks, he said carefully, we cannot continue full treatment without payment much longer. Kiera froze. Please, just one more night. The account has been extended too many times. Mama Evelyn closed her eyes in shame. Kiera reached in her pocket and pulled out 3 damn bills. This is all I have. The doctor looked away. Tiny hope died in her palm. Across the city, Malcolm sat alone in the back of his luxury car, staring at an old scanned photograph on his phone. A little black girl wore the same broken moon pendant. Near her wrist was the same crescent birthmark. Malcolm's voice dropped low as he called Curtis Hale. Find everything about Kiera Brooks. Her mother. Her hospital. Her records. Tonight, back in the charity ward, Mama Evelyn suddenly gripped Kiera's wrist with surprising strength. Her eyes were full of fear. "If anyone asks about that necklace," she whispered, saying nothing. Kiera leaned closer. "Mama, what is going on?" Mama Evelyn's breathing shook. "Never tell them your real father's name." Kiera went still. "My real father?" Before Mama Evelyn could answer, she began coughing hard. Machines beeped. Nurses rushed in. Kiera stumbled backward. "Helpless. Please help her." As the nurses moved around the bed, something slipped from beneath Mama Evelyn's pillow. A folded, old photograph. Kiera picked it up slowly. Her breath caught. The picture showed a younger Mama Evelyn standing in front of Reed Mansion beside a wealthy black couple. In Mama Evelyn's arms was a baby wearing the same silver moon pendant. But the baby's face had been carefully torn away. Kiera Brooks stared at the torn photograph in her hand while the hospital machines beeped behind her. The baby's face had been ripped away so carefully it looked like someone had tried to erase her from the world. "Mama," Kiera whispered, her voice shaking. "Who is this child?" Mama Evelyn turned her face toward the wall. Fear moved across her tired eyes before she could hide it. "Put away," she whispered. "Please." Before Kiera could ask again, footsteps stopped outside the room. A tall black man in a dark gray suit appeared in the doorway, holding a leather folder against his chest. "Miss Brooks?" he said quietly. Kiera stepped back, hiding the photograph behind her. "Who are you?" "Curtis Hale," he answered. "I work for Malcolm Reed." Mama Evelyn's breathing changed immediately. Her fingers tightened around the blanket. "No," she whispered. "Not the Reeds." Kiera looked at her, stunned. "You know them?" Curtis noticed the fear. He did not move closer. "Mr. Reed asked me to check old records connected to your hospital account, your mother, and a moon pendant." Kiera's hand closed over the necklace at her chest. "Why does he care?" Curtis lowered his voice. "Because some records connected to Evelyn Brooks were removed from the Reed archive 23 years ago." Silence filled the small room. The poor hospital walls suddenly felt even colder. Mama Evelyn closed her eyes as if the past had found her at last. "They promised it was buried," she whispered. Curtis slowly placed an old file on the bed tray. Its corners were damaged. Several pages were missing. One name had been blacked out so deeply the paper had almost torn. Kiera stared at it with frightened eyes. "I do not understand any of this." "Neither does Mr. Reed," Curtis said. Yet, across the city, Malcolm sat alone in his private office while rain crawled down the tall windows. Old family photos covered his desk. Security footage from the wedding played silently on his computer. He paused the image on Kiera's silver moon pendant, then placed beside it a scanned photograph of a little girl wearing the same one. His jaw tightened. Vanessa Cole entered without knocking. "You're still chasing that homeless girl?" Malcolm did not look up. "Why were hospital records removed from my mother's foundation archive?" Vanessa stopped for half a second, too small for most people to notice. Malcolm noticed. "I have no idea," she said. "That girl is using you." Malcolm finally raised his eyes. Calm, cold, quiet. "You recognized the necklace before I said a word." Vanessa crossed her arms. "Everybody recognizes cheap street jewelry." Malcolm's voice dropped. "That pendant belonged to someone in my family." Vanessa looked away first. Back at St. Mary's, Curtis opened the damaged file. Kiera leaned closer despite her fear. A faded intake form showed Evelyn Brooks listed as guardian. Below it sat another line. "Emergency transfer authorized by Reed Foundation Medical Division." Kiera swallowed hard. Mama worked for them. Mama Evelyn's eyes filled with tears. Only long enough to learn that rich houses have locked rooms too. A nurse walking past the door slowed down. A janitor stopped near the hall corner. Curtis saw them both and quietly closed the file. "We should speak privately." Kiera shook her head. "No. People with money always say that before poor people disappear." The sentence landed hard. Curtis went silent. Mama Evelyn suddenly grabbed Kiera's wrist. "The photograph," she whispered. "Never show Vanessa." Kiera froze. "Vanessa?" Curtis's eyes sharpened. "You know Vanessa Cole?" Mama Evelyn turned pale. "Too well." Then her chest tightened. and she began coughing hard again. Nurses rushed in. Curtis stepped back as Kiera held her mother's hand, crying but still standing. On the floor, the old file slipped open. Curtis bent to pick it up and saw a torn page tucked beneath the cover. Only one line remained readable under faded ink. Infant identity sealed by family request. The last name survived at the bottom. Curtis stared at it, then slowly took out his phone. Malcolm answered on the first ring. "What did you find?" Curtis looked through the hospital glass at Kiera, clutching the moon pendant, still unaware of what was moving around her. "Sir," he said carefully, "the missing name in the file is damaged, but the last name is clear." Malcolm stood up in his office. "Say it." Curtis swallowed. "Reed." Curtis's words moved through Malcolm Reed's phone like a warning siren. "The last name is Reed." Malcolm stood still inside his private office, surrounded by old family photographs and half-buried records. Rain tapped against the windows behind him. On the hospital line, Curtis lowered his voice even more. "Sir, Kiera does not know what this means yet." Malcolm's jaw tightened. "Keep her safe." Across the city, Kiera Brooks stood outside Mama Evelyn's hospital room with the silver moon pendant pressed against her chest. Nurses moved past her. Poor families whispered in plastic chairs. Her mother was still coughing behind the glass, and Kiera felt the same fear crushing her ribs again. "Safe from who?" she asked Curtis. Curtis did not answer fast enough. That silence scared her more than words. Then the elevator doors opened. Vanessa Cole stepped out in a cream coat, dry and perfect, like the storm had never touched her. Two hospital administrators followed behind her. Kiera's stomach dropped. "What are you doing here?" she whispered. Vanessa smiled softly for the people watching. "I came to stop a dangerous misunderstanding before it ruins innocent lives." Curtis stepped in front of Kiera. "Miss Cole, this is not the place." Vanessa ignored him and lifted a folder. "This girl entered a private wedding, stole food, caused a public scene, and now she is trying to connect herself to the Reed family through fake documents." The hallway turned toward Kiera. Nurses paused. Patients stared. Someone whispered, "That is the girl from the wedding video." Kiera's face burned. "I did not fake anything." Vanessa's eyes hardened. "Then why are you hiding a stolen photograph?" Kiera froze. Her hand moved to her pocket too late. Vanessa saw it. Curtis saw it. So did the crowd. One administrator stepped closer awkwardly. "Miss Brooks, we have received a complaint. Your presence is disrupting hospital operations." Kiera looked toward Mama Evelyn's room in panic. "My mother is sick. I cannot leave her." Vanessa tilted her head with cruel patience. "Your mother has survived by lying to you. Maybe it is time someone told you the truth." Kiera's voice shook. "Do not talk about my mother." "Then stop dragging rich people into your poverty," Vanessa snapped. The words hit the hallway hard. A few people looked away in shame, but no one defended Kiera. Social pressure closed around her again. Not chandeliers this time. Not wedding guests. Hospital workers. Sick families. Strangers with tired eyes. Still, they stared at her like she was the problem. Curtis's phone buzzed. Malcolm's voice came through low. "Do not let Vanessa take the file." Vanessa heard his name and smiled colder. "Malcolm is confused. Grief makes men weak." Curtis looked at her. "And fear makes people careless." Her smile cracked for 1 second. Tiny hope entered Kiera's chest. Maybe Curtis believed her. Maybe Malcolm did too. But Vanessa struck again. "Security," she called. "Escort Miss Brooks out until legal review is complete." Kiera stepped back, horrified. "Please, my mother needs me." One guard reached toward her arm. Curtis blocked him. "No one touches her." The hallway went silent. Vanessa's voice dropped. "You are protecting a thief because Malcolm feels guilty." Kiera's tears rose, but she stood straighter. "I took bread no one wanted. I did not steal a family." Vanessa's eyes flashed. For the first time, Kiera's dignity wounded her more than begging had. Then a small voice came from behind a vending machine. Isaiah, a thin little boy from the ward, stepped forward holding something wrapped in cloth. "Grandma Evelyn told me to hide this if the rich lady came." Vanessa went pale. "Give that to me." Curtis moved first. Isaiah placed the cloth in his hand. Inside was an old folded paper with burned edges and a tiny silver key tied to a moon-shaped charm. Vanessa's calm shattered. That belongs to the Reed archive. Curtis looked up slowly. How would you know that? Complete silence. Kiera stared at the paper, shaking. A faded line showed through the fold, but Curtis closed it before anyone could read more. Vanessa stepped closer, desperate now. That document is stolen property, Kiera whispered. Then why was it hidden with my mother? No one answered. At the end of the hallway, Mama Evelyn's weak voice floated from the open door. Kiera, everyone turned. The old woman lifted one trembling hand toward the cloth in Curtis's grip. Do not let her take it. Vanessa's face lost all warmth. Curtis opened the paper just enough to see the first words. His expression changed instantly. Then he called Malcolm again. Sir, he said carefully, you need to come to St. Mary's now. Kiera's breath caught. Curtis looked at the burned document one more time, then back at Vanessa's terrified face. Because whatever they tried to bury, he said, it has your family name on it. Malcolm Reed arrived at St. Mary's with rain on his black coat and silence in his face. The hospital hallway changed the moment he stepped out of the elevator. Nurses moved back. Administrators stopped whispering. Vanessa Cole straightened like she still owned the air, but her eyes kept dropping to the burned document in Curtis Hale's hand. Kiera Brooks stood beside Mama Evelyn's room, one hand on her silver moon pendant, the other holding Isaiah close. She looked tired, hungry, humiliated again, but she did not run. Malcolm walked toward Curtis first. Show me. Curtis opened the burned paper carefully. The edges were dark. Half the ink had faded, but one line remained clear enough to silence the hallway. Temporary infant record, baby girl Reed. Assigned guardian, Evelyn Brooks. Kiera's breath caught. Baby girl Reed, she whispered. What does that mean? Vanessa stepped forward fast. It means someone planted old trash to confuse you. Malcolm did not look at her. His eyes stayed on the hospital seal at the bottom of the page. This seal was discontinued 23 years ago. Curtis nodded, and the document matches the missing Reed Foundation transfer file. Silence spread. Even the administrator stopped pretending to read his clipboard. Kiera looked at Mama Evelyn through the glass. Her mother's eyes were open now, wet with fear. Mama, Kiera whispered, why does that paper have my last name on it? Mama Evelyn's lips shook, but no sound came out. Vanessa cut in sharply. Because poor people learn rich names and build lies around them. Kiera turned toward her slowly. Tears filled her eyes, but her voice stayed low. I did not ask for your name. I asked for food. The words hit the hallway harder than shouting. Malcolm finally faced Vanessa. And you were more afraid of her necklace than any stolen food. Curtis unfolded the tiny cloth again and placed the silver key beside the burned paper. A moon-shaped charm hung from it, matching Kiera's pendant. Isaiah pointed at the numbers carved into the metal. Grandma said this opens the room where truth sleeps. Curtis studied the engraving. His face changed. Sir, these numbers look like a private archive code. Malcolm took the key slowly. Tiny hope moved through Kiera's chest, but it was painful hope. Dangerous hope. If you're listening right now, comment what you think this hidden clue means. Why would a homeless girl have a Reed infant record, a moon key, and a necklace Vanessa is so desperate to silence? Vanessa's voice shook as she tried to laugh. A child's story and burned paper prove nothing. Then Mama Evelyn spoke from the room, weak but clear. She knows it is real. Every head turned. Vanessa went pale. Mama Evelyn lifted one trembling finger toward the key, because she saw it the night of the fire. Malcolm's hand tightened around the silver key. What fire? Before Mama Evelyn could answer, the administrator rushed forward with official papers. Mr. Reed, there's a legal complaint demanding Miss Brooks leave hospital property immediately. Kiera's face collapsed. No, please. My mother needs me. Vanessa lowered her eyes, pretending sadness. Rules are rules. Curtis took the complaint form and read it quickly. His expression hardened. This was filed through Reed Foundation Legal Division. Malcolm looked at the signature. Then, at Vanessa. 30 minutes ago. Vanessa said nothing. The hallway went cold. Malcolm folded the burned infant record and placed it inside his coat with the silver key. "Curtis," he said quietly, "find the final archive connected to the Reed Mansion fire." Vanessa's face lost all color. Kiera saw it. Malcolm saw it too. Then he turned toward the hospital room, where Mama Evelyn was crying silently behind a glass. "And until I know why my family name is on this child's record," he said, "no one takes Kiera Brooks anywhere." Malcolm Reed's words settled over the hospital hallway like a locked door. "No one takes Kiera Brooks anywhere." The administrator stepped back with the complaint papers still shaking in his hand. Vanessa Cole's face stayed smooth, but her eyes had turned sharp and frightened. Kiera stood beside Isaiah, one hand around the silver moon pendant, the other still trembling from everything she had heard. Baby girl Reed. Mansion fire. Reed Foundation. None of it felt like her life. It felt too rich, too old, too dangerous. Malcolm turned to Curtis Hale. "Move Mama Evelyn to a private treatment room. Keep the record sealed. And make sure the complaint disappears until we know who filed it." Curtis nodded. "Yes, sir." Kiera looked up quickly. "I cannot pay for a private room." Malcolm faced her with quiet care. "I did not ask you to." Her pride rose before her gratitude could. "I am not charity." Malcolm did not flinch. "No, you are a daughter trying to keep her mother alive." The words broke something soft inside her. She looked away before he could see the tears. Vanessa laughed coldly from near the elevator. "How touching. The billionaire saves the poor girl, and suddenly everyone forgets she stole from a wedding." Kiera's shoulders tightened. Malcolm's voice stayed calm. "She took discarded food. You filed a false complaint." The hallway went silent again. A nurse lowered her eyes. The administrator folded the papers slowly, ashamed. Tiny rescue. Small justice. Not enough to heal the wound, but enough to let Kiera breathe. Mama Evelyn was moved before midnight into a clean room with warm blankets and working machines. Kiera stood near the door, afraid to touch anything. The white sheets looked too clean for her hands. The lamp glowed softly. There was water on the table, real medicine beside the bed, and no one shouting about payment. Isaiah stared at the room with wide eyes. "Is Grandma safe now?" Kiera swallowed hard. "For tonight." Malcolm heard that. For tonight. Not forever. The words carried the whole weight of Kiera's life. He stepped closer, but not too close. "She will receive care while Curtis verifies the records." Kiera shook her head. "Why are you doing this?" Malcolm looked at the moon pendant resting against her wet hoodie. "Because that necklace was not supposed to be in the rain tonight." Kiera's voice dropped. "It has always been in the rain." That sentence made Malcolm go still. Not because it accused him, because it sounded like truth. Across the room, Isaiah touched the silver key on the bedside table. "Grandma said this key was for the room where people hide what they are ashamed of." Malcolm looked at him sharply. "Who taught her that?" Mama Evelyn opened her eyes weakly. Her lips trembled as she stared at Malcolm. "Your mother once said the same thing." The room froze. Vanessa, standing outside the glass, heard it and stepped back as if the floor had moved under her. Malcolm noticed her reflection in the window. Curtis noticed too. Tiny hope rose again, but danger rose with it. Suddenly Curtis's phone rang. He answered, then his expression darkened. "Sir," he said quietly, "the old East Wing archive has been accessed tonight." Malcolm's hand closed around the silver key. Vanessa turned away too quickly. Kiera saw it this time. "She knows where it leads," Kiera whispered. Malcolm looked at Vanessa through the glass, then back at Mama Evelyn. "What is in that archive?" Mama Evelyn began to cry, silently. She lifted a trembling hand toward Kiera. "Tell her," she whispered. "Tell her what happened that night before they silence me again." Mama Evelyn's trembling words filled the private hospital room. "Tell her what happened that night before they silence me again." Kiera Brooks stood beside the bed with the silver moon pendant pressed against her chest. Malcolm Reed held the matching archive key in his hand. Curtis Hale stood near the door, watching the hallway like danger could walk in wearing a smile. Outside the glass, Vanessa Cole remained still, but her reflection showed fear she could not hide. "What night?" Kiera whispered. Mama Evelyn closed her eyes. The night Reed Mansion burned. The room went quiet. Even the machines seemed to beep softer. Malcolm stepped closer, calm but tense. Evelyn, what do you know about the fire? Mama Evelyn looked at him with tired eyes. I know your father lied to the world after it. Malcolm's jaw tightened. Kiera looked between them, lost and frightened. What does that have to do with me? Mama Evelyn reached for Kiera's hand. Her fingers were weak, but her fear was strong. Your mother came to Reed Mansion carrying you that night. Kiera stopped breathing. My mother. Vanessa suddenly opened the door. Enough. This woman is sick. Malcolm turned his head slowly. Close that door, Vanessa. She froze. His voice was quiet, but no one in the room mistook it for a request. Curtis stepped forward and shut the door before she could enter. Vanessa stood outside, furious and afraid. Mama Evelyn began crying softly. Naomi Brooks worked in the Reed kitchens years ago. She was poor, but she had pride. She trusted a promise from a powerful man. Kiera's voice broke. Naomi, Mama Evelyn nodded. Your real mother. Pain crossed Kiera's face so sharply Malcolm looked away for 1 second. She had spent her whole life believing Evelyn was all she had. Now even love felt full of locked doors. Why did you never tell me? Kiera whispered. Mama Evelyn squeezed her hand. Because truth was dangerous. Curtis opened the old archive folder and placed a burned photograph on the tray. A young woman stood outside Reed Mansion in the rain, holding a baby wrapped in a pale blanket. The woman's face was tired, terrified, beautiful in a broken way. Kiera reached toward the photo with shaking fingers. Is that her? Mama Evelyn nodded through tears. That is Naomi. Malcolm stared at the background of the picture. The West Gate. The same gate from the old fire report. The same gate his mother once refused to speak about. Who took this photo? He asked. Mama Evelyn's eyes moved toward the hallway. Walter Hayes, a security guard. He saw more than he was allowed to say. Curtis looked up immediately. Walter Hayes disappeared from the staff records after the fire. Tiny Hope entered the room. A witness. A name. A living piece of the past. Then Mama Evelyn whispered, but he was afraid of Vanessa. The hope turned cold. Kiera looked toward the glass. Vanessa was no longer there. Malcolm noticed too. Where did she go? Curtis opened the door fast and checked the hallway. Empty. The elevator light blinked downward. Curtis's phone rang a second later. He listened, and his face hardened. Sir, someone just tried to access the East Wing archive again. Malcolm's hand tightened around the silver key. Mama Evelyn suddenly pulled Kiera closer. Listen to me, she whispered. That woman did not just hide a necklace. She hid a child. Kiera's eyes filled with tears. Was that child me? Mama Evelyn opened her mouth, but a sharp alarm sounded from the nurse station before she could answer. Curtis turned toward Malcolm. The archive door was open from inside the mansion. Malcolm looked at the key in his hand, then toward Kiera. For the first time, his quiet power carried real urgency. Mama Evelyn pointed weakly at the burned photograph. Find Walter, she whispered. He knows who ordered the baby erased. Curtis's phone call ended, and the private hospital room fell into a silence that felt heavier than the rain outside. The archive door was open from inside the mansion, he said again. Malcolm Reed looked at the silver key in his hand, then at Kiera Brooks standing beside Mama Evelyn's bed with the burned photograph pressed against her chest. Vanessa, Kiera whispered. Malcolm did not answer, but his eyes said enough. Mama Evelyn gripped Kiera's wrist weakly. Do not go there alone, she begged. That house eats truth. Malcolm stepped closer, calm but urgent. No one is going alone. Hours later, Reed Mansion glowed beneath golden lights, as if nothing ugly had ever happened behind its gates. Luxury cars lined the driveway. Family members and foundation board guests filled the ballroom for what Vanessa called an emergency dinner. Kiera stood near the entrance in her same worn coat, holding Isaiah's hand. Her shoes looked small against the polished marble. Her face carried fear, but she did not lower her head this time. Malcolm stood a few steps ahead of her with Curtis beside him, both watching every corner. Vanessa appeared near the staircase in a black dress, elegant and cold. Everyone, she said, lifting her glass. Thank you for coming on such short notice. Tonight, we protect this family from a dangerous lie. Kiera's stomach tightened. Malcolm looked at Vanessa. Choose your next words carefully. Vanessa smiled. I already have. She turned toward the crowd and raised a folder. This girl was caught stealing food at my wedding. Since then, she has carried fake documents, manipulated a sick old woman, and used a child to plant stolen Reed property. Gasps moved across the room. Kiera felt Isaiah's fingers squeeze hers. That is not true, she said softly. Vanessa stepped closer. Then explain why money disappeared from the Reed charity account after you entered this house. The ballroom changed instantly. Phones lifted again. Guests whispered. I knew it. She came back for money. Poor girls always have a plan. Kiera shook her head, stunned. I never touched any account. Vanessa placed another paper on the table. The transfer went to a shelter near your old neighborhood. Kiera's voice broke. I have never had enough money to open an account. A few guests laughed under their breath. Malcolm's jaw tightened, but he did not move too soon. He was watching Vanessa build the trap. He needed the last piece. Vanessa turned toward security. Search her bag. Kiera stepped back. No. One guard reached forward, but Malcolm's voice stopped him. Touch her, and you answer to me. Silence hit the room. Vanessa's smile trembled, then returned. You see? She has made Malcolm protect her from basic truth. Curtis leaned toward Malcolm. Sir, the charity transfer record is forged. But the final verification is not here yet. Malcolm's eyes stayed on Vanessa. Where is Walter Hayes? Curtis answered quietly, still missing. Tiny hope faded. Vanessa knew it. She pressed harder. If she is innocent, let her empty her pockets. Kiera slowly pulled out the silver moon pendant, the burned photograph, and the folded hospital paper. Her hand shook, but her voice stayed clear. These are all I have. Vanessa reached for the burned paper. Isaiah suddenly stepped in front of Kiera. Do not give it to her. Grandma said she hides children. The room froze. Vanessa's face turned sharp. That boy has been taught to lie. Kiera pulled Isaiah behind her. Do not speak to him like that. For 1 second, guests saw the homeless girl as a mother. Not a thief. Not a rumor. A mother protecting a child. Tiny hope returned. Then Vanessa snapped her fingers, and a lawyer stepped forward with another document. This confirms Miss Brooks is under investigation for fraud against the Reed Foundation, he said nervously. Kiera went pale. Curtis read the paper fast. His face hardened. This was filed before the alleged transfer happened. Vanessa's eyes flashed. Too late. Malcolm heard it. So did several guests. The trap cracked, but not enough to break. Vanessa raised her voice. Lies are always messy when desperate people invent them. Social pressure crushed the room again. Kiera's chest tightened. She looked at Malcolm, but he still waited. Not because he doubted her, because truth needed a witness. Then Curtis's phone buzzed. He read the message and went still. Sir, he whispered, Walter Hayes is at the front gate. Vanessa's face lost color. The mansion doors opened before she could speak. An old black man stepped inside, soaked from the rain, holding a dusty videotape in both shaking hands. I kept quiet for 20 years, Walter said, his voice breaking as he looked at Kiera. But I cannot let them bury her twice. Walter Hayes stood at the open mansion doors with rain dripping for his old coat and a dusty videotape shaking in his hands. I kept quiet for 20 years, he said again, looking past the rich guests and straight at Kiera Brooks. But I cannot let them bury her twice. The ballroom went silent. Every phone lowered a little. Every glass stopped halfway to someone's mouth. Vanessa Cole stood near the staircase, frozen for 1 second before her polished smile returned. This man is a disgraced former employee, she said sharply. He was removed from Reed Mansion for misconduct. Walter's eyes filled with pain. I was removed because I saw what you did. A hard breath moved through the crowd. Kiera held Isaiah closer, her fingers still wrapped around the silver moon pendant at her chest. She wanted to believe Walter. She wanted to run from the room. Both feelings hurt. Malcolm Reed stepped toward Walter with quiet authority. Bring him in. Vanessa moved fast. Malcolm, no. This is a family matter. Malcolm looked at her. Calm. Cold. Then the family will hear it. Curtis Hale guided Walter to the center of the ballroom. The same marble floor where Kiera had been called a thief now became a stage for the truth. Chandeliers shone above rich faces. Security guards stood near the walls. Foundation board members whispered behind folded hands. Kiera remained near the entrance in her worn coat, looking painfully small against all that money. Vanessa pointed at her again. Look at what she has done. A homeless girl walks into a wedding, steals food, and now her home is full of old lies and criminals. Kiera's voice trembled, but she did not lower her head. I did not bring him here. Walter turned to her softly. No, child. Your mother did. Silence hit again. Malcolm's eyes sharpened. What do you mean? Walter lifted the videotape. Naomi Brooks made me promise that if her daughter ever came back to this house, I would show what happened at the West Gate. Kiera stopped breathing. Naomi, she whispered. The name still felt new, still painful, still hers somehow. Vanessa laughed too loudly. A dead woman cannot make promises. Walter looked at her. But the living can break them. Curtis ordered staff to lower the projector screen beside the grand staircase. The white screen descended slowly, cutting through the gold light like a curtain before judgment. Vanessa's face tightened. You cannot play unverified footage in front of guests. One Reed lawyer stepped forward nervously. Mr. Reed, this could damage the foundation if shown publicly. Malcolm did not look away from the screen. The foundation was already damaged when someone used it to erase a child. A deep silence followed. Tiny hope moved through the ballroom. Some guests looked at Kiera differently now. Not with trust yet, but with doubt. Doubt was enough to begin. Isaiah slipped his small hand into Kiera's. Mom, he whispered, is Grandma's truth in that box? Kiera swallowed hard. I hope so. If you're listening right now, comment who deserves justice in this room. Do you believe the poor girl who was humiliated for bread, or the powerful woman trying to stop a 20-year-old tape from playing? Vanessa heard the murmurs changing and struck one last time. She stepped into the center of the ballroom, tears suddenly shining in her eyes. Malcolm, please. I am begging you. Do not let strangers destroy your father's name. Malcolm's face did not move. My father's name does not need protection from truth. Walter's hands shook as Curtis connected the old tape player. The machine clicked. The screen flickered once, then went dark again. The room held its breath. Vanessa turned toward the guests, desperate now. If that tape is fake, remember who brought it here. Remember who benefits from this. Kiera felt every eye return to her. Shame tried to pull her head down, but Malcolm stepped beside her without touching her. Quiet protection, stronger than any speech. She stays where everyone can see her, he said. Because this time, no one tells her story behind her back. Curtis adjusted the cable. Walter closed his eyes like he was praying. Isaiah clutched Kiera's hand. Vanessa's face turned pale as the projector light finally brightened. Malcolm walked to the center of the room, holding the silver key in one hand and the burned infant record in the other. He looked at the crowd, then at Vanessa, then at Kiera. Nobody leaves this room, he said quietly. Curtis pressed play. The screen flickered. Static filled the ballroom. Walter whispered, Lord, forgive me. Malcolm's voice cut through the deadly silence. Before you judge her, he turned toward the glowing screen as the old footage began to appear. Watch this. The screen flickered through static, then the old footage appeared. Reed Mansion looked younger, darker, soaked under heavy rain. The West Gate filled the ballroom screen. Every guest stopped breathing. Kiera Brooks stood beside Malcolm Reed with Isaiah's hand locked in hers, the silver moon pendant cold against her chest. Walter Hayes covered his mouth with one shaking hand. That was the night, he whispered. On the screen, a young woman stumbled toward the gate carrying a baby wrapped in a pale blanket. Her clothes were wet. Her hair clung to her face. Her eyes were terrified, but she kept holding the child close. Kiera leaned forward without meaning to. Naomi, she whispered. Walter nodded through tears. Your mother. The ballroom went completely silent. Vanessa Cole shook her head fast. This proves nothing. But her voice sounded smaller now. On the tape, Naomi banged on the iron gate. Please, her voice cracked through the old audio. Tell Mr. Reed I brought his daughter. He promised she would be safe here. Gasps broke across the ballroom. Kiera's knees weakened. Malcolm's face went pale, but his voice stayed controlled. Keep playing it. The footage continued. A younger Vanessa appeared near the gate in a long coat, holding an umbrella. Her face was cold, even through the grainy image. Naomi lifted the baby higher, and a small silver moon pendant slipped from the blanket. The same broken moon Kiera wore. The same shape, now trembling against her heart. Young Vanessa stepped closer and hissed, "You should never have come back." Kiera's breath broke. Isaiah pressed against her side. The rich guest who had once called her a thief now stared at the screen in frozen shame. Curtis Hale placed the burned infant record on a table beneath the screen. Temporary infant record, he said clearly. Baby girl Reed. Guardian assigned, Evelyn Brooks. Vanessa snapped. Those records were altered. Curtis opened another file. Yes, by someone with Reed Foundation access. Malcolm slowly turned toward Vanessa. And you had that access. Vanessa's lips parted, but no answer came. The tape changed to a second clip. Hospital hallway. Dim lights. A younger Vanessa stood beside a records clerk, pushing a document across the counter. Her voice crackled through the speakers. Remove the child's name from the Reed file. Seal it under Evelyn Brooks. No one is to connect that baby to this family. A woman in the ballroom gasped. Someone else whispered. She erased her. Kiera stared at the screen as if the floor had disappeared beneath her. Her voice came out broken. My whole life was hidden in a folder. Malcolm stepped closer, but he did not touch her. No, he said quietly. Your life was stolen, not hidden. Vanessa moved backward, shaking her head. I protected the family. Walter looked at her with 20 years of pain in his eyes. You protected a lie. Malcolm opened the final archive envelope. Inside was a faded birth certificate amendment, a letter with Naomi's name, and a transfer document signed by his father. His hands trembled once before he steadied them. Naomi Brooks, he read, mother of female child. Father listed under sealed Reed family amendment. The ballroom did not move. Malcolm lifted the last page, and his voice dropped. This document ordered the child to be recognized after the fire investigation closed. Vanessa looked like all the air had left her body. Curtis pointed to the signature line. Your father signed it. Someone intercepted it before it reached the court. Kiera covered her mouth as tears spilled down her face. He knew about me. Malcolm looked at her, pain and shock fighting behind his calm eyes. He tried to make it right. Vanessa suddenly shouted. She would have taken everything. The room froze. Her own words betrayed her. Malcolm turned slowly. So you knew who she was. Vanessa opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Walter stepped forward with one final small envelope. Naomi left this with me before she disappeared, he said. She said if her daughter ever stood inside this house, Malcolm Reed must read it in front of everyone. Malcolm took the letter. His eyes scanned the first lines. Then his face changed. Deep shock. Real grief. He looked at Kiera like the past had just become flesh in front of him. Vanessa backed toward the staircase. Malcolm lifted his eyes to her, quiet and cold. Why did my father hide his second daughter from the world? Malcolm Reed's question hung over the ballroom like a judge no one could escape. Why did my father hide his second daughter from the world? Vanessa Cole stood near the staircase with every rich guest staring at her. For the first time that night, her diamonds did not look powerful. They looked heavy. Kiera Brooks stood beside the screen, one hand over her mouth, tears sliding down her face, while Isaiah held her other hand tightly. The silver moon pendant rested against her chest like a witness that had waited 20 years to speak. Vanessa shook her head slowly. Your father was weak, she whispered. Naomi Brooks came here with that child and ruined everything. A shocked breath moved through the ballroom. Malcolm's face stayed calm, but his eyes went colder. That child has a name. Vanessa looked at Kiera with hatred she could no longer hide. She was never supposed to have the Reed name. The room froze. Her own words sealed her. Curtis Hale stepped forward and placed the birth amendment, the infant record, the hospital file, and Naomi's letter on the table beneath the screen. The documents show Kiera Brooks was connected to the Reed family by sealed amendment, he said clearly. The records were removed through Foundation access. The hospital file was altered. The charity complaint against her was filed with a forged authorization. Vanessa snapped. You cannot prove I did all of that. Walter Hayes lifted his trembling hand. I saw you order the gate footage erased. Vanessa turned on him. You were paid to stay silent. Walter's eyes filled with pain. Yes, and I have lived with that shame every day. Public silence hit harder than laughter ever could. The guests who had called Kiera a thief now looked down at the marble floor. One woman slowly deleted the video of Kiera crying over wet bread. A man who had laughed at her outside the gate turned his face away. Kiera noticed, but she did not smile. She had waited too long for a room full of rich people to feel embarrassed. Malcolm picked up the Silver Moon key and placed it beside the pendant. This key opened my mother's archive locker, he said. Inside were Naomi's letters. Letters Vanessa never allowed my father to answer. Curtis opened the final folder. There is also a signed transfer returning the Willow Avenue property to Naomi Brooks and her child. It was never filed. Kiera's breath caught. My mother had a home. Malcolm looked at her with controlled pain. She tried to give you one. Vanessa stepped forward, desperate now. Malcolm, I was protecting your inheritance. Your name. Your future. Malcolm's voice dropped. You protected your position by stealing a child's life. The words broke the room open. Vanessa's face collapsed. She would have taken everything. Kiera finally spoke, her voice small but steady. I came here for bread. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. That one sentence carried the whole story. The girl they called greedy had only wanted leftovers for her sick mother. Malcolm turned to the Foundation lawyer. Effective immediately, Vanessa Cole is removed from all Reed Foundation authority. All records connected to Kiera Brooks and Naomi Brooks will be restored. The forged complaint is withdrawn. The evidence goes to legal review tonight. Vanessa staggered back. You cannot do this to me. Malcolm did not raise his voice. You did this in front of everyone. The guests pulled away from her one by one. No one touched her. No one shouted. No one needed to. Her punishment was the silence of people who finally saw her clearly. Walter lowered his head and whispered, Naomi, I am sorry. Kiera's tears fell harder, but she did not beg anymore. She stood with her son beside her, her mother's necklace in her hand, and for the first time in her life, the room did not look through her. Malcolm gently picked up the pendant and placed it back into Kiera's trembling palm. Your mother protected the truth until it found you, he said. Isaiah looked up at Kiera. Mom, does this mean Grandma was telling the truth? Kiera closed her eyes as pain and relief crashed together inside her. Yes, she whispered. She was. Then Curtis returned from a hallway with his phone against his ear, his expression softer than before. Sir, he said quietly, Mama Evelyn is awake. She's asking for Kiera. Kiera froze. Malcolm looked toward the open mansion doors, then back at her. Go to her, he said gently. And after tonight, Kiera Brooks, no one will ever throw you out of this family again. Kiera Brooks ran through the hospital doors before the night could take another breath. Malcolm Reed walked behind her with quiet steps, holding the restored files in one hand and the Silver Moon key in the other. Isaiah clung to Kiera's coat as they entered Mama Evelyn's private room. The old woman lay under clean white blankets now, weak but awake, with soft light on her tired face. Kiera stopped at the foot of the bed. For a second, she was not the girl from the wedding. She was not the homeless mother accused of stealing bread. She was only a daughter who had almost lost the one woman who never stopped protecting her. Mama, she whispered. Mama Evelyn turned her head slowly. Tears filled her eyes when she saw the pendant in Kiera's hand. You know now, she said weakly. Kiera nodded, crying. You kept me alive. Mama Evelyn reached for her. Kiera fell beside the bed and held her hand with both of hers. I am sorry I did not tell you sooner, Mama Evelyn whispered. I was afraid the truth would take you from me. Kiera shook her head. Nothing can take me from you. Isaiah climbed carefully onto the chair beside the bed. Grandma, the bad lady cannot hide us anymore. Mama Evelyn smiled through tears. Malcolm stood near the door, silent and respectful. Not a savior, not a ruler, just a man finally facing the damage his family had allowed to live too long. Your care is covered, he said gently. No one will move you out again. Mama Evelyn looked at him for a long moment. Your mother would have wanted that. Malcolm lowered his eyes. The words hurt, but they also healed something. Days passed, and the world around Kiera changed slowly. Not like a fairy tale, not all at once, but one paper, one key, one truth at a time. Vanessa Cole was removed from the Reed Foundation and placed under public legal review. No shouting followed her, no violence, no dramatic revenge, only closed doors, empty offices, and the silence of people who no longer bowed to her power. The same wealthy guests who had laughed at Kiera's torn shoes now watched her name cleared in every record Vanessa had tried to bury. Curtis restored Naomi Brooks' letters. The Willow Avenue property was returned. Isaiah's school papers were signed. Mama Evelyn's treatment continued without another cruel bill placed beside her bed. One morning, Kiera stood outside the small house on Willow Avenue with the silver pendant resting against her chest. The paint was old. The porch needed repair. The garden was wild, but it was hers. It was Naomi's promise returned from the dust. Isaiah ran up the steps and touched the door like it was magic. Mom, do we really live here? Kiera covered her mouth as tears rose again. Yes, she whispered. We live here. Malcolm handed her the old house key. Your mother tried to leave this for you. Kiera looked at the key, then at him. And now I can leave something for my son. That afternoon, Kiera placed Naomi's photograph on a small wooden table near the window. Beside it, she laid the moon pendant, the burned infant record, and a fresh white flower. Mama Evelyn sat nearby in a wheelchair with a blanket over her knees. Isaiah leaned against her side, safe and full for the first time in days. No cold floor, no wood breath, no guard-grabbing arms. Just sunlight, food on the table, a door that opened for them. Later, Kiera returned once to Reed Mansion. Not to beg, not to steal, not to prove anything. She walked across the same marble floor where people had called her a thief. The ballroom was quiet now. A waiter who had once looked away lowered his head in shame. Kiera did not punish him. She only nodded and kept walking. Her dignity was louder than revenge. Malcolm watched from the staircase, then spoke softly. You never lost your worth. They only failed to see it. Kiera touched the pendant and looked toward the doors where the rain had once swallowed her. My mother knew who I was before anyone else did. Evening settled over Willow Avenue with warm gold light. Laughter drifted from the open windows. Mama Evelyn rested peacefully. Isaiah ate at a real table. Kiera stood on the porch, no longer hiding from the world. She was Naomi Brooks' daughter, Mama Evelyn's child in love, Isaiah's mother, a Reed by blood, but worthy long before any rich name found her. Because truth may be delayed, but it does not die. Do not mock the poor. Do not judge a person by torn clothes, empty hands, or hunger in their eyes. The one you push outside today may be carrying a story powerful enough to bring every hidden lie into the light. And in the end, kindness will always outlive cruelty.